is not how I expected this to go. So last week we had a really big windstorm and my entire greenhouse flipped over. I haven't had a chance to come out here because obviously I got a cold, a really, really nasty cold that left me with no voice and no energy. And now I'm finally getting out to see how I can salvage this epic disaster. Hi, I'm Jess from the blog siloandsage.com, and today we are going to be trying to fix this greenhouse disaster. We live in Wisconsin and we live in a really windy place, and I have had some really good success with one greenhouse that is kind of tucked in between our garage and a row of trees, so it doesn't really go anywhere. It's really secure, and I had moved this one into our backyard in front of our woods because I thought it would be a much better position for it and it would get a lot less wind, because this greenhouse has already flipped over like 3 times. But I was wrong. So I'm gonna pick up my GreenStalk and fix all of that, replant all the things that are now all over the floor, all over the ground. And I bought some really, really heavy duty stakes to re-stake the greenhouse that hopefully this will never ever happen again. So I'm gonna start with the GreenStalk and get that situated, and then I am gonna try to flip over the greenhouse, probably find one of my kids or my husband to help me, and then I'm gonna stake it in the ground, and hopefully this thing will just never ever move again. One thing I really love about the GreenStalk vertical garden system is that it is usually really, really sturdy and does not move. I have one that sat outside all summer long that never ever moved. My kids couldn't knock it over, my chickens didn't knock it over, but it is, of course, going to fall over if you have a giant windstorm that blows over your entire greenhouse. So this GreenStalk, though, doesn't even have a scratch on it. It is so sturdy. The materials are so strong that a huge windstorm, when the whole thing knocks over, is not even going to leave a scratch on it. This is the second time that I've had a storm take out my greenhouse and also take down one of my GreenStalks, and both times they were left without a scratch, totally unharmed. I was able to put them back up with no problem, just had to refill the dirt and replant what I had going on in there. But I'm so happy with this GreenStalk system. I will link a video above to show you all about the GreenStalk if you're not familiar with it, so that you can see how I put it all together, tell you about all the different parts, and I'll have a discount code in the description as well. I may end up with a few surprises in this GreenStalk because some of the seeds that I had planted in here originally were very, very small, like kale seeds. So I may or may not end up with some surprises as things start to germinate and sprout, but I was able to replant all of my beans into the GreenStalk, so hopefully those will do well in the GreenStalk this year. I recruited my 14-year-old son to help me flip this greenhouse back over. He and I have done this together a couple times because the greenhouse has flipped over a couple times. We had to maneuver around some kind of thorny wild raspberry branches that were underneath where we were. And you can see that there is a little bit of damage to the frame. You can see it was bent a little bit. It doesn't really seem to affect the integrity of the greenhouse anymore now that it is resituated, but there is a slight break in one of the poles that was a little bit disappointing. I think it is just because of the force at which it landed and into the woods that it did get a little bit of damage, because the first 2 or 3 times that it flipped over, it didn't sustain any damage at all, just a little bit to the cover when it landed like on a tree and it got punctured. So I am really impressed with the quality of this greenhouse. So So my oldest and I got the greenhouse resituated, and it seems to be in pretty good shape. There's definitely some spots where the metal poles got bent, and even one spot where the pole broke a little bit, but it'll work. And there's a little bit of damage to the cover, but overall it's still in really good shape. I do have to replace the door again because it's just kind of a makeshift zipper that I talked about in the video where I completely explained all about these greenhouses and how we like them and what I did for the door and all of that. So I'll link that video below if you want to learn more about the greenhouses, and hopefully this video will help you secure your greenhouse in a way that this won't happen to you also. So I got these stakes off Amazon, and they are really, really high quality. Like, they are strong, and they're advertised as like trampoline stakes to keep your trampoline from, you know, protected from high wind. So hopefully these will work really well. So I'm gonna stake them in to, like, I'm gonna stake them over the base of the greenhouse, and I'm gonna stake them right through the cover. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but I think that'll work because the cover will like blow around. If there, you know, if it gets wind underneath it, it will lift up and it will blow too. So there are some little like ties to secure it, but they don't seem to work all that great. So I'm just gonna do whatever I can to secure this to the ground so that I can finally actually get this greenhouse to work. I also want to show you a few plants that I planted before all of this happened. So I planted several little boxes of, there's my coffee. I planted several little boxes of mostly just greens, radishes, kale, lettuce, things like that. A couple of them, their labels blew away, but I think it'll be pretty clear once they come up. It was really just greens and radishes, arugula, spinach, kale, stuff like that, salad greens. So some of them have not started to come up yet, but the radishes have. And this, I must have planted one variety on one side and another variety on the other side. So we will see what comes up. I also brought over, I have these grow bags that I grew a bunch of stuff in last year, and a bunch of kale seed pods must have landed in here, and a bunch of kale has sprouted, so I'm excited about that. Before you hammer the stakes in, make sure that you have the greenhouse exactly where you want it to be, that you don't need to, you know, resituate the cover or move it around at all, because once you get those stakes in, they're not going to be very easy to get out. It's possible, of course, but it's not going to be something that you're going to easily take them in and out on a regular basis. You'll definitely need a mallet to pound the stakes into the ground, but if your ground is soft, you'll have no problem doing it on your own. Whew. I kind of feel like I'm dying. Maybe hammering stakes into a greenhouse after you've been sick for like almost a week is not really the best way to recover. Probably not. Priorities. This greenhouse is a priority. Well, now that I've got the greenhouse staked down and I have a few repairs to do on cover and have to get everything set up again in here, but I'm feeling a lot better about it, and I'm hoping, really hoping, that this is the last time that this greenhouse flips over. So I will keep you updated and let you know how it holds up, because I mean, I want to say I have high hopes. But we'll see. Since we're talking about the greenhouse today, I want to show you that this greenhouse is successfully still standing. It has been holding fine against the wind and has not had all the problems that the other one has had, but I moved a bunch of my seedlings into this greenhouse and they are doing awesome, and I have some things growing, so I want to show you some success stories along with our failures. So I'm going to show you the things that are growing in here.
So out here I have this greenhouse shelf that can be closed up and gets really, really nice and warm in addition to the greenhouse itself. So I've got out here, I've got all of my cabbage seedlings that are doing really, really well. I have not had a lot of success with cabbage here because of cabbage moths, and I'm hoping that I'm gonna put them in some beds that have like mesh row covers right away so that they hopefully will not get eaten this year. I have some herbs going up here. I've got a whole tray of peppers that have not germinated yet, and honestly, I'm not sure if they will. I have other peppers that were planted at the same time that did germinate, so I'll have to see. I'm gonna give these a little bit more time. I moved them out here in hopes that they would get a little warmer inside this greenhouse shelf, and it definitely is a lot warmer even than my house, so we'll see how that goes. I honestly can't remember what I even planted in there. And then I've got more cabbage going down there. And here this just restarted all on its own, and I have no idea what it is, so it's kind of a mystery. I've got some lettuce greens going in here. I had some onions that were growing over the winter and kind of stopped, and now they've started again. I planted, I think, arugula in there. And I've got some lettuce greens, a bunch of onions going, lettuce greens. All of these greens just restarted in these pots from last year. I didn't do anything with them. Same with these greens down here. I've got spinach that has come up that I didn't plant at all. I've got onions. Again, I'm not even sure what these are. Arugula maybe. Something's going in there that I didn't plant that just came back. My chives have restarted, and my chives outside are also starting and they're growing really well, but these are a lot bigger. So I've got a bunch of stuff in my GreenStalk. I've got kale and arugula and spinach and a couple things that just, I think that's lettuce greens that just started on their own from last year, but I made sure I refilled all of the GreenStalk tiers. I've got some great looking arugula down there. So I refilled all these tiers, and we will see. I haven't decided what to fill these up with, but I do have some good greens that are starting to come up in there. So even though this greenhouse has done really, really well, I am going to stake this one down also, just for like extra assurance. It might be a little bit more difficult because this one is actually on a gravel driveway, so I'm hoping that maybe I can get my husband to give me some extra manpower to help me get these stakes in the ground. But I think it'll work really well, and I'm hopeful that this could be the end of my greenhouse disaster problem. So if you have any great suggestions for my greenhouse and how I can keep it stable, or if you've tried these stakes and they work well or they don't work well, I'd love it if you would share your thoughts, opinions, ideas in the comments, and I will keep you updated on how it goes. So it was just yesterday that I staked down my greenhouse, and today we had really super high winds, a wind advisory, and look, the greenhouse is still standing. We may have done it. We may have found a way to keep this thing from blowing over.